You wake up, you scroll, you work, you eat, you sleep, and somewhere in between you realize something terrifying. Nothing excites you anymore. Not success, not relationships, not even the things you used to pray for. And here's the disturbing truth. This isn't depression, and it isn't laziness, it's conditioning. A silent psychological trap that almost everyone in this room has fallen into without noticing. If you've ever asked yourself, why do I feel empty when my life looks fine? Then what you're about to hear will either deeply offend you or change how you see your mind forever. Stay until the end, because the last insight explains exactly how to reverse this numbness, and most people never hear it. Most people believe something is wrong with them because they don't feel joy anymore. They assume they're damaged, depressed, unmotivated, or missing some internal peace that everyone else seems to have. That belief is comforting in a strange way, because if you're broken, then the problem is you. But the truth is far more unsettling and far more hopeful. Your brain is not broken. It's doing exactly what it was trained to do. Your nervous system is a prediction machine. It learns patterns, adjusts expectations, and optimizes for efficiency. When you repeatedly expose it to high levels of stimulation, constant entertainment, instant gratification, endless novelty, it adapts. What once felt exciting becomes normal. What once felt normal becomes dull. This is not a flaw. This is learning. The problem is not that life stopped offering joy. The problem is that your threshold for stimulation quietly moved upward without your permission. You trained your brain to expect intensity without effort. So now, when life presents something subtle, conversation, progress, peace, routine, it registers as insufficient. Think about it this way. If someone listens to loud music all day, silence doesn't feel calming. It feels uncomfortable. Not because silence is bad, but because the ears adapted to noise. Your emotional system works the same way. You've conditioned it to constant input, so stillness feels empty instead of restorative. This is why people say, I have everything I wanted, but I feel nothing. Their expectations outpaced reality. Their reward system was recalibrated. Achievements feel flat not because they lack value, but because the brain expected a bigger chemical payoff than reality can provide. Overtraining doesn't happen overnight. It happens quietly through habits that seem harmless, checking your phone first thing in the morning, filling every pause with content, consuming without producing, receiving rewards without resistance. Each behavior reinforces the same lesson to the brain. Effort is optional, stimulation is constant, and anticipation matters more than fulfillment. Eventually, the brain stops responding strongly to everyday rewards. It conserves energy. It becomes efficient. And efficiency in this context feels like numbness. Not sadness, not despair, numbness. People try to fix this by adding more goals, more entertainment, more stimulation. But that's like turning up the volume when your ears are already overwhelmed. The system doesn't need more input, it needs retraining. Joy doesn't disappear because you failed. It fades because your brain adapted too well to an environment that never asks you to slow down, wait, or struggle. The same mechanism that helps humans survive also dulls them when misused. Understanding this changes the question from what's wrong with me to what have I been training my brain to expect? Most people talk about dopamine as if it were the chemical of happiness. They assume that when dopamine rises, joy follows. That belief is one of the biggest misunderstandings about the human brain. Dopamine does not reward you for having something. It motivates you to go after it. It is the chemical of pursuit, not satisfaction. Dopamine activates before the reward arrives. It spikes in the moment of expectation, in the chase, in the belief that something good is about to happen. That is why scrolling feels addictive. That is why anticipation feels better than ownership. The brain lights up not when you achieve the goal, but when you believe you're getting closer to it. This creates a dangerous loop in modern life. You are constantly triggered into anticipation without resolution. Notifications, previews, teasers, and promises keep dopamine elevated while denying completion. You stay in a state of wanting, not receiving. Over time, The brain becomes skilled at craving and weak at contentment. When dopamine dominates your emotional landscape, happiness becomes impossible to hold. The moment you get what you want, dopamine drops. The brain immediately looks for the next target. Satisfaction becomes brief, shallow, and forgettable. The chase becomes more familiar than the arrival. This is why people feel restless even after success. They reach a milestone and feel an emptiness instead of fulfillment. The mind was chemically invested in the pursuit, not the outcome. Once the pursuit ends, so does the emotional charge. The modern environment exploits this system relentlessly. Endless options create endless anticipation. You are always one click away from something better, faster, or more exciting. The brain never settles because it is constantly scanning for the next hit of possibility. Joy, however, lives in a different chemical space. It requires presence, it requires completion, it requires the nervous system to stop seeking and start absorbing. Dopamine does not help with that. In fact, excessive dopamine blocks it. When anticipation becomes constant, nothing feels enough. You stop enjoying meals because you're thinking about the next one. You stop enjoying relationships because you're imagining better ones. You stop enjoying rest because you're planning productivity. The future hijacks the present. This is why silence feels uncomfortable. Silence offers no anticipation, no chase, no promise of something better. For a dopamine-trained brain, silence feels like deprivation rather than peace. People try to fix this emptiness by increasing stimulation, thinking the answer is more excitement. But the more anticipation you generate, the less capable you become of enjoying what is already here. The brain was never meant to live permanently in the future. It was designed to move toward a goal, arrive, and then rest. When rest is replaced by constant wanting, the system never resets. The question is not why happiness fades so quickly. The question is how often you allow your brain to finish the chase before forcing it to start another one. Comfort feels harmless. It feels earned. It feels like progress. No one warns you about it because it doesn't arrive as pain or loss. It arrives as ease, as convenience, as relief from struggle. And that is why it's dangerous. Comfort doesn't attack you directly, it slowly removes the conditions that once made life feel meaningful. The human nervous system evolved to respond to challenge. Uncertainty sharpened attention. Difficulty created focus. Effort gave outcomes weight. When survival required action, the mind stayed engaged. Purpose was not something you searched for, it was something the environment demanded from you. Modern comfort removes that demand. Food arrives without hunger. Entertainment arrives without boredom. Validation arrives without contribution. When effort and reward are disconnected, meaning weakens. The mind senses this, even if you don't consciously articulate it. Comfort trains the brain to expect safety without engagement. Over time, anything that requires effort feels like a threat. Discomfort becomes something to avoid rather than a signal to grow. The threshold for stress lowers. Small challenges feel overwhelming, not because you are weaker, but because you are underexposed. This is how comfort preys on you. It doesn't take away your abilities. It makes you forget you have them. You stop testing yourself. You stop risking failure. You stop choosing difficulty voluntarily. And without difficulty, confidence has nowhere to form. A comfortable life often looks successful from the outside. Stable income, predictable routine, minimal conflict, but internally, something erodes. You feel restless without knowing why. You feel bored in situations that should satisfy you. The mind senses a lack of friction and interprets it as emptiness. Comfort also distorts time. When everything is easy, days blur together. There are no markers, no moments that stand out. Challenge creates memory. Effort creates contrast. Without contrast, life feels shorter, flatter, less vivid. This is why people chase artificial struggle. Extreme workouts, risky behaviors, overworking. They are trying to feel something real again. The body remembers that intensity once meant aliveness. The tragedy is that comfort convinces you it is protecting you. It whispers that ease is the goal, that discomfort is unnecessary, that safety equals happiness. But the nervous system doesn't interpret safety as joy. It interprets it as neutral, meaning lives where comfort ends. Growth requires exposure to resistance. When life stops asking anything of you, you stop offering anything back. The exchange breaks down. This is not a call to suffer needlessly. It is a recognition that removing all friction removes all texture. A life without resistance becomes smooth, and a smooth life gives nothing for the mind to grip. Comfort doesn't steal your joy loudly. It erases it quietly, one easy choice at a time. Distraction is often mistaken for relief. It feels like escape, like control, like rest. But distraction doesn't calm the nervous system. It keeps it busy. When every spare moment is filled with input, the mind never completes a single emotional process. Feelings begin, but they don't finish. Emotions require stillness to unfold. Joy, sadness, curiosity, even motivation need space to develop. When you interrupt that process with constant stimulation, the brain learns to stay shallow. It skims experiences instead of sinking into them. Over time, depth disappears. This is why people say they feel numb, not sad. Numbness isn't the absence of emotion, it's the absence of emotional completion. You feel a signal, then immediately override it. Scroll, switch tabs, turn on noise. The message is never received. Distraction teaches the brain that discomfort is intolerable. The moment boredom, anxiety, or uncertainty appears, you eliminate it. The nervous system never learns that these states are temporary. It never learns regulation. It only learns avoidance. Avoidance comes at a cost. When you suppress uncomfortable emotions, you also suppress the pathway to positive ones. The brain does not have separate circuits for pain and joy. When you mute one, you dull the other. Distraction fragments. Attention. Fragmented attention fragments experience. You are physically present but mentally divided. When attention is split, emotional intensity drops. Nothing feels fully real because you are never fully there. This constant partial presence creates a strange fatigue. You consume more but feel less. You rest without restoration. You entertain yourself without satisfaction. The mind stays active while the emotional system stays unresolved. Silence becomes threatening because it allows unfinished emotions to surface. Stillness feels heavy because it reveals what you've been avoiding. So you keep the noise on, not because you enjoy it, but because it keeps you from feeling. Depth requires boredom. Boredom is not emptiness. It is the doorway to imagination, insight, and emotional integration. When you remove boredom, you remove the conditions necessary for inner movement. This is why meaningful experiences often happen when you disconnect. Long walks, late-night conversations, focused work. The nervous system finally has space to process and respond fully. A distracted life feels busy but empty, not because nothing happens but because nothing lands. Experience enters the mind and exits before it leaves a trace. When you never allow yourself to sit with an emotion, you never learn what it's trying to teach you. The message fades, and with it, your ability to feel deeply. Joy is commonly associated with pleasure, comfort, and relaxation. People imagine it as something that appears when life becomes easier. But ease does not create joy. Ease creates neutrality. The nervous system relaxes, but it does not light up. It settles into maintenance mode. Resistance is what activates engagement. When something pushes back, your attention sharpens. Your body responds. Your mind organizes itself around the task. In that state, experience becomes vivid. Effort gives moments texture. Think about the times you felt most alive. They were rarely the easiest moments. They were moments of challenge, risk, uncertainty, and focus. You were required to show up fully. That demand pulled you into the present. When life removes resistance, attention drifts. Without something to push against, the mind scatters. You feel restless, not because you lack stimulation, but because nothing requires your full involvement. Resistance creates meaning by linking effort to outcome. When you work toward something that can fail, success carries weight. When something costs you energy, it matters more. Joy arises from the contrast between strain and release. Ease removes that contrast. When everything is accessible, nothing stands out. The nervous system stops differentiating. Pleasure flattens. You get comfort without satisfaction. Modern systems are designed to reduce friction. Convenience is marketed as progress. But when friction disappears, so does the sense of earned reward. You receive without striving, and the brain struggles to register value. This is why effortless pleasure feels hollow. Binge watching, endless scrolling, passive consumption. These activities provide stimulation but no resistance. They occupy attention without engaging identity. Resistance also builds confidence. Each challenge you face expands your sense of capability. Without challenge, self-trust erodes. You may feel safe, but you don't feel capable. Joy requires the knowledge that you can act, adapt, and overcome. Avoiding resistance teaches the nervous system to equate difficulty with danger. Small obstacles feel overwhelming. Motivation declines. The mind learns helplessness in an environment that asks nothing of it. Resistance does not mean suffering for its own sake. It means choosing effort where effort is optional, choosing growth where stagnation is comfortable, choosing depth where surface-level pleasure is easy. Joy emerges when you engage fully with something that demands you. When attention, effort, and presence align, experience becomes rich. The nervous system responds with vitality, not because the task is easy, but because it is meaningful. A life organized around ease becomes fragile. A life that includes resistance becomes alive. Rebuilding joy does not start by adding something new. It starts by removing what has quietly trained your nervous system away from depth. Modern habits are not neutral. They shape expectations, attention, and emotional thresholds. The difficulty is that they feel normal. They feel necessary. They feel like the cost of living in a connected world. The first habit to unlearn is constant availability. When your attention is always open, it is never owned. You respond instead of initiate. Your nervous system stays in a low-level alert state, waiting for the next interruption. Joy cannot settle in a system that never fully rests or fully engages. Another habit is filling every empty moment. Waiting, walking, eating, resting. These spaces were once where reflection and integration occurred. Now they are erased. When silence disappears, so does the mind's ability to process experience. You lose the internal rhythm that allows emotions to rise and resolve. Unlearning also means breaking the association between stimulation and reward. When every effort is immediately followed by distraction, the brain stops linking work to satisfaction. Delayed reward is not a punishment. It is how the nervous system learns value. When you remove the delay, you remove the meaning. Modern habits teach you to outsource regulation. When you feel bored, you reach for content. When you feel stressed, you seek escape. The nervous system never practices self-regulation. It never learns that discomfort can be survived, interpreted, and used. Rebuilding joy requires reintroducing friction intentionally, doing things that are slow, effortful, and unrewarded in the short term, reading without skimming, working without multitasking, exercising without entertainment. These acts retrain attention and recalibrate expectation. Joy returns when anticipation is reduced and presence is restored. When the mind stops constantly reaching forward, it begins to absorb what is happening now. This shift feels uncomfortable at first. The nervous system protests. It has been conditioned to chase. Unlearning also involves tolerating emotional quiet. Not every moment needs to feel exciting. Stillness is not failure. It is recovery. When you allow quiet without filling it, something unexpected happens. Sensitivity increases. Subtle pleasures become noticeable again. The process is slow because it is biological, not motivational. You are not convincing yourself to feel joy. You are rebuilding the conditions that allow it to emerge naturally. This requires consistency, not intensity. Most people abandon this process because the early stages feel empty. That emptiness is not loss. It is withdrawal from constant stimulation. Beneath it, the nervous system is recalibrating its thresholds. Joy does not come back as a rush. It returns as clarity, depth, and engagement. You don't feel euphoric, you feel present. And presence is the foundation from which joy becomes possible.